Hi guys, and welcome to the first video in what will hopefully be a series of videos about making ProjectKorra add-on abilities. In this series, I hope to teach you a thing or two about how to make different kinds of abilities for ProjectKorra. In this particular episode, we'll be making a very simple move called Pyromancy, which allows firebenders to set a block on fire by right-clicking on it with the move bound, and it will spawn a few fire particles around that block for a few seconds. Before we dive into coding this move, I want to clarify that I want to clarify some things about my plans for this series. I have a few things in my head that I want to cover in other videos, like making a blast, moving the player, finding a target, finding a source, using temporary blocks, you name it. But in the end, I just would love to hear from you what you want to see. So I'm in a ProjectKorra Discord. You can always hit me up, just say, I'm having a bit of trouble with this particular subject, or I'm not sure how to tackle this problem, and I can try to cover it in a video. We'll see. Or I'll just help you directly. You never know. Just whatever's best. Then one more thing before we dive into coding is I am going to assume that you already have some basic Java knowledge. Now, you really don't have to be some Java veteran in order to follow along. Just please make sure you're familiar with things like a class, a method, variables, loops, even preferably lists, stuff like that. But maybe the most important thing is object-oriented programming. Now, if you don't know what that is, don't panic. There are a lot of tutorials online that can teach you about it. And while I won't be explaining what it is in this series, if enough people want it, I'm willing to make a separate video about it. If all these terms sound even vaguely familiar to you, then congratulations, and you can keep on watching the video. Alright, so I'll be working with IntelliJ for this video, but I know a lot of you are working with Eclipse, so I went ahead and downloaded Eclipse, and I will be showing all the platform-specific actions, like creating a project, importing the libraries, and exporting to a jar file in both IDEs. Alright, so first off, I'm going to start with IntelliJ. We're going to create a new project, which I hope it would actually do. Yeah, thank you so much. A new Java project. I don't want any of the fancy stuff, just a Java project. Hit next and use no template. And I am going to put it in a different folder. Project personal, ProjectKorra. Yeah, I think this is a good place. And we create a new folder, and let's call it tutorial series. And then we hit OK, and in that we're going to create a pyromancy. Call it pyromancy, and put it in a pyromancy folder. Then we hit finish. It says want me to create a directory. Of course, create a directory. That's what I just asked you to. Alright, so while that is starting up, excuse me, let's go over to Eclipse and do the same thing. So we're going to create a Java project, and let's see where it is. It's our personal project, ProjectKorra tutorial series. Alright, that's great. And let's go ahead and say pyromancy. This was automatically configured GRA and a project layer based on the existing source. Okay, so it has detected the folder that we just created in IntelliJ. I don't want that, so I'm just going to say Eclipse behind it. So we're going to create two separate projects. I'm not going to be programming in this Eclipse variant, just showing how to do it. So we create the project. Don't create a module info.java file. We don't need that. And we've got ourselves our Eclipse project as well as our IntelliJ project. Alright, Before we do anything else, we need to import our dependencies. We need to tell our IDEs that we want to use external dependencies, namely Spigot and ProjectKorra. Now, in IntelliJ, this is kind of complicated. You want to go to the project structure, which you can open by pressing Ctrl-Alt-Shift-S, or going to File, and I think it's here, yeah, project structure, and then we go to libraries. Now, or was it modules? I always forget which one it is, and it might even be artifacts. Let's just go with libraries. We'll say import a Java library. It's gonna ask us, okay, where's the library? Well, let's first go ahead and import Spigot. So I have that over here in my build tools folder, but you're gonna have to build this yourself because it's not allowed. People aren't allowed to just redistribute this jar file. All right, add it to the selected modules. Hit OK, and a problem has occurred. Okay, there's no more problems. Okay, we've added Spigot. Now we're gonna add ProjectKorra. So I have mine on a I have mine in my own folders here. I have a commission folder, libraries, and in that there's a ProjectKorra jar 1.9.0, and just throw that in as well, and hit apply, and okay. Now we've imported our external libraries. Now we're going to do the same for Eclipse, though I always have a bit of a hard time on how to do this because I do not use Eclipse. So let's try and figure out how this works. Alright, so you go to project, I believe that's what I did. Yeah, you go to project, hit properties, and then you go to Java build path. Now here we're gonna go to the libraries tab and hit class path. And then we say add external jars to the class path. We're gonna find Spigot first. Spigot is over here. Hit open, and we've added Spigot to the class path. Now we're going to do the same for ProjectKorra, which I have over here. There we go, and then we hit apply. We'll just apply and close, and now we have reference libraries, Spigot, and ProjectKorra. All right, time to head back to IntelliJ. All right, so now let's go ahead and create a package for our code. We right-click, hit new, and we are gonna try to find. Oh, hold on. We're gonna right-click the source folder. My bad, and create a new package. Now there are also the naming conventions for creating new packages, and we're gonna stick to those. Normally you would use a website. However, since there is no website associated with our add-on ability, you can use me and then your name, or just your online name. I will be using my online name, Fimbueno, and then the name of the project, which will be Pyromancy. So for me, it's going to be me.fimbueno.pyromancy, but if you have a personal website with like a .com domain, you could go for com. Whatever that domain name is, .project, the project name. But for me, we're just going with me.fimbueno.pyromancy. Just know that these are just conventions, and whatever you call this, as long as you use valid characters, it doesn't matter. Alright, so we've created it, and now we are going to create a single Java class, which will be our class that represents our move. So let's go ahead and call it Pyromancy, and create that class, and it's going to load, and we've created it. Wow, that's so great. Pyromancy, a move that allows the bender to set a block on fire. How cool is that? All right, so now we're getting into the actual code. The first thing that we want to do when we create a new move is we want to extend an existing ability class. Now, what does that mean? That basically means that we say, all right, we want our class, this class, to have everything that this other class has and more. I will just show you what it's like. So we go extends fire ability, and it's going to say, all right, do you want to import that class because it's not a normal class? So we say, yes, we do. It's from ProjectKorra, and an import will be added here. Now, when I hold Control and then click on fire ability, we'll be taken to the fire ability class, and as you can see, it's just a full-blown class with methods and variables and everything. So when we say extend fire ability, it basically means that we want everything that fire ability has, and we're gonna add on to that. Now, because we're making an add-on ability, we also have to implement an interface called add-on ability. We go ahead and do that, and this might look similar to extends, except that this word is different. But, well, I guess it is kind of similar, though they're still different. Here, extending means that we want everything that this class has to offer, and we're going to add on to it. Now, when I hold Ctrl and click on add-on ability, we just see 4 methods that do not even have a body. They don't return anything. They do nothing. Implementing means that we basically assure to the world, or just anyone, that our class will have the methods that are defined in here. There is no way that we will not have those methods because we implemented add-on ability, and therefore you can assume and just it's guaranteed that we will have those methods. And that's important because ProjectKorra is going to ask our add-on ability, all right, what's your author name, what's your version, what do I need to do when you load for the first time, and what do I need to do when you stop, when the server stops. And our add-on ability needs to be able to respond to that request, and by basically assuring ProjectKorra that we have those methods that it's looking for, we do that by implementing add-on ability. So implementing is for assuring to the world, or just anyone, that a certain methods are implemented in our class, and extending is for basically copying existing functionality and then adding on to that. Alright, now there's a big fat error line. Let's see what it says. Class pyromancy must either be declared abstract or implement abstract method progress in ability. Alright, let's just alt enter and say implement methods. Now it's going to show us a bunch of methods, some from add-on ability and some from just indirectly from fire ability. So we just hit OK, and it's going to implement all the empty methods that we need in our class. Why is it not doing it? Let's try again. Oh, how great, it's not working. Alright, there we go. Now it's still given an error, and that's correct because there were 2. We need a constructor. We need a constructor that matches the super constructor. A super constructor is basically the constructor of the class that we're extending. Basically, when you extend a class, you call the class that you are extending the superclass. So the super constructor is the constructor of the class that we are extending. And when we create a constructor in our class and we're extending from another class with a constructor, we always need to call the constructor of our parent class. Alright, let's first get into some of these methods that have been added to our class. So I'm going to rearrange them. I'm going to say this goes over here, this one is gonna go here, and these are going over here. Alright, so let's start off with the easy ones. First off, we have isSneak ability. This is basically just a simple method that tells ProjectKorra whether or not this ability requires the player to sneak or not. You might wonder what this is for, but It's actually pretty simple. Keep in mind that in ProjectKorra there are certain passives that require the player to have a move bound that doesn't require sneaking, like Swift Swim for waterbenders. This ability will basically tell ProjectKorra, can those things activate with this ability bound or not? Well, since Pyromancy is just going to be a right-click ability, this is going to be false, because we do not use sneaking. And there's Is Harmless ability. Is Harmless ability basically tells ProjectKorra whether or not this ability deals any kind of harm to anyone. Things like Water Spout and Air Spout are good examples of harmless abilities, as well as Air Scooter. This ability will be creating fire and therefore can be considered dangerous. Therefore, we're going to say it's not harmless, and thus we return false. Then there's Get Author, Get Version, and Get Name. These all are pretty self-explanatory. Get Author, I'm going to just say Fimbueno. Version, we will say 1.0.0. And for author, I will say Fimbueno, and I just realized that I entered my author name on the name. This obviously has to be Pyromancy. There we go. Let's add it to the dictionary. Alright, we got these things handled now. Let's go over to the load and stop method. Alright. Now, if you've ever programmed a normal Spigot plugin before, these might look familiar to you. The load method is basically an on-enable, and the stop method is basically an on-disable. The load method is going to load whenever your move gets first loaded by ProjectKorra. The stop method is doing the opposite thing. It's going to be executed when your move gets unloaded by ProjectKorra. This will usually be when the server stops, and this will usually be when the server starts. Now, things you do in here are you register a listener, you register a permission, and you initialize default config values. That's because these things all happen once when the server starts. And then in here, you usually remove permission and optionally remove listener. Now, I say this is optionally because normally stop is called when the server stops. And when the server stops, all registered listeners and permissions are removed. However, in some ProjectKorra has a reload command, and that's used to reload the configuration files. And when that happens, it's also going to reload add-on abilities. However, if you don't remove your permission and listener in your stop method is going to get called. It doesn't remove any of the stuff you've registered in here. The server hasn't restarted, so they don't automatically get removed. And then load is going to be called again, but the server hasn't stopped, so your original listener and permission are still there. And then load is going to be called again, and a second listener is going to get registered, which means everything is registered twice. And then a permission is attempted to be registered, which already exists, so it's going to throw an exception. That's why you should always manually remove the permission and the listener in the stop method. Alright, we won't be writing that yet, just writing it down in comments. Then there's the get cooldown method, which basically tells ProjectKorra what the cooldown is for this given ability. Because it's possible to just say add cooldown and then pass a player and a move, and then using this method it will find out what the cooldown for that move is. Now let's just say it's 1500 milliseconds. Cooldowns are in milliseconds. Then there's get location. Now, get location might sound a little weird, but keep in mind that some abilities aren't static. They are like they have a certain location that progresses, like Fire Blast, Air Blast, Torrent, Surge Wave, just a lot of things. And you want to know where that move is to, for example, check for collisions or check if they have moved into a protected area. That's what this move is for. To keep things simple, I'm for now just going to set this to player get location. You might wonder where player suddenly comes from here. That is something that that's a variable from fire ability. As you see in this constructor, which is called when this class is created, we basically pass the player up to our superclass, our parent class, which then keeps track of it. This way, there are a few more handy variables which we will be getting into later, but player as well as B player, the bending player, are very important ones and are provided to us through our superclasses. Then here is the single most important method that you will be using a lot when making moves. It's the progress method. The way things work in games is that every tick in Minecraft, a tick is a 20th of a second, everything in the game is attempted to be updated. So monsters move where they want to go, items check if they have to be despawned, crops are checked if they should grow to the next stage, and so on and so on. And the same goes for our bending abilities. Every tick we want to check, we want to progress our move. Let's say we have something like Fire Blast. Every tick we want to move the fire to into the direction it was shot in and see if it's hit anything, and if so, stop it and deal with appropriate damage. The progress method is what that is used for. It's called 20 times a second, which you should keep in mind so you don't do any things that are way too heavy, because it's going to run 20 times a second and it could potentially slow down your server. Though usually you don't have to worry about that unless you start doing some really crazy stuff. Alright, then the constructor is basically just what we're going to call when we want to create a new instance of this move for a given player, and you will see that right now because we are going to create a new class, the listener. We are going to call this pyromancy listener, and a listener basically is a kind of class that listens for certain events that happen in the game. This can be a mob spawns, which is an event. The player left clicks or right clicks a block or an item, it's also an event. Someone takes damage, is also an event. And there are a lot of events in Spigot, also in ProjectKorra, and we can listen for any of them. And when we listen for an event, we will be notified when it takes place. Any listener class needs to implement listener, and we are basically going to go ahead and say create a method, and we're just going to call it on right click, and we say player interact event. Now this method is our listener. It's called on right click, and it gets one argument of type player interact event, and we're just going to call it event, and this is the event that we are listening for. Now when we create an so-called event handler, a method like this, we need to add a annotation to it, add event handler, which will let Spigot know that this method is a method in which we want to receive an event. We're just going to say suppress the unused warning if we added an annotation event handler. Alright, there we go. And then in here we are going to do a couple of checks. First off, we're going to extract the player that this event is about into its separate variable so we can access it more easily. Then we are going to say if event.getAction equals action right click block. We are going to check if the action that was performed in this event was a right click on a block, and if so, we want to continue. Though it would be more clear if we instead check if it was not a right click on a block, and if so, we return. We stop running anymore in this method. Alright, let's actually just pull this variable below this check because we're not using this variable in this check. Alright, once we've done that, we want to check if the player, first we want to get a bending player from that, from a normal player. To do that, we do bending player dot get bending player, and we throw in the player variable. Now, if bending player is null, it means that this user has done absolutely nothing with ProjectKorra on this server yet, and therefore they cannot have moves bound, and that means that they will not be activating this move. Now at this point, we know that there is a bending player for this user, and we want to see if they can bend our moves. So we say bending player dot can bend, and there are a couple versions here. There's the normal can bend, which is the one we'll be using, but we're going over the other ones. Can bend passive, which specifically checks if this person can bend a given passive. I don't know what happens when you pass a non-passive move. You can try it. I don't know what happens. Then there's can bend ignore binds, which basically says, can this user bend this move? But don't check for the binds. So basically, when I have my slot on Fire Blast and I say can bend ignore binds for Fire Shield, it'll check whether or not I can bend Fire Shield, but it won't check if I have the right binds. We also have can bend ignore cooldowns, which does the same but ignores the cooldowns. And then there's another one which combines those two, can bend ignore binds and cooldowns, which basically just checks for like protected regions and permissions. But we want to use this one because it checks for everything at once, which is exactly what we need. Now we need to pass in a class. I believe we have to pass in a class. Let me double check. Can bend. No, I'm sorry. We need to pass an instance of an ability. And that's alright, we can do that. We need to grab the instance of our pyromancy ability. We can do that by doing core ability.get ability and then saying pyromancy.class. Now, for people who know how object-oriented programming works, this might feel a bit weird. But the way ProjectKorra works is that when a add-on ability is found and it's loaded, it's going to create a quote-unquote fake instance of the ability class without a player. It's a bit hacky, but it works. This is also part of the reason why an overhaul is coming. And basically, in ProjectKorra's memory, there is always a single instance of every ability without a player that is just used to retrieve information about it. Like the name, the version, the author, if it's harmless, if it's a sneak ability, the cooldown, that kind of stuff. Alright, and that's what we retrieve by saying core ability.get ability, and then we pass that instance to can bend, and that's gonna check if we can bend the current move. Alright, given that we can bend the current move, we are going to create a new instance of pyromancy, like this, and just pass our player like that. And that's it for the listener. We only have to register it in here. So to do that, we want to use the ProjectKorra plugin, because we always need to register a listener to a plugin. And then say get server, get plugin manager, register events, and we create a we say listener and ProjectKorra plugin. Now listener isn't a thing yet, but we are going to create it and say create field listener in pyromancy. All right, and then in the load method, we just say listener is new pyromancy listener. We create a new instance of our pyromancy listener like this, and then we say register that. Now you wonder, why should we create a field like this? It's even asking, field can be converted to a local variable, and it's not wrong, but we need to remove the listener here as well. And to do that, we say handler list dot unregister all, and then we pass our listener instance. And now that we've done that, our listener will be unregistered, and the pk reload command will not register multiple listeners for us. Alright, that's great. Now let's get into programming the actual move. I don't want to make it package private. Let me just disable that. Alright, as we said, when this listener runs, we're going to create a new instance of pyromancy. So in the constructor, we basically put the code that we want to run when the move gets started. When the move gets started, we want to say, let's go say the bending player, add cooldown. Now we want to basically add a cooldown for this ability, so we just pass this instance of the ability to it, and it'll find out what cooldown to add by using this method. Because we want to do something every few seconds, we are also going to call the start method, which will register this move into ProjectKorra and make sure progress starts running. Before we do that, however, we want to call a method which will set alight the block that we just clicked. So light and then block. Now neither of these things exist yet, so first we're going to create a private void light. Let's actually call it light up. Well, even better, set on fire. We just do set on fire, and in there we want to get a single block. Now we don't know what block is yet either, but that is something that the event knows. If we go in here and we say event get clicked block, we have figured out what the block is that was clicked. So let's just keep it easy and go ahead and pass that to the pyromancy class. And then in here we just need to add that. Alright, now we just set this block on fire. So basically, let's just make it so that this move only sets a block on fire when there is a I was gonna say let's only make it so that this move only works when you right click a block that has air above it, but no, I don't agree with that. Let's take a step further. Let's make it work on any block. This event also knows which side of the block was clicked using event get block face. So if we just pass that one along to our pyromancy class as well, and then to the set on fire method, like this, we can basically just grab the block, say get relative, which gets a block relative to the original block. Now the block face is a direction. So when I go there, we see there's north, east, south, west, up, down, and a whole bunch more, which we don't need to worry about really. And that's great because basically it's gonna be either north, east, south, west, up, or down, and we can just throw in the block face, and then we can just do set type material dot fire. Now this should set alight the block that we just clicked. Now what we wanted to do was we want to spawn some fire around the block that we just set in flames. So to do that, we need to save the block that we just set on fire in a class variable, which we can access in the progress method. So let's go ahead and say private block fire. Now we need to give this a value, so let's actually go ahead and say that the block relative to the block that was clicked is the block that sets on fire, and then we just say fire.setType. Alright, now that we've saved this block into a variable, we can just grab it in the progress method and spawn some particles around it. So first off, let's get the center of the block. First, we are going to grab the location of the block by doing fire.getLocation, and then we are going to add to that location 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. When we call getLocation on a block, it's always going to be in the corner, in the very most lowest, most to the left, most to the back corner. So by adding 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 to every axis, we move the location to the middle of the block. Then to spawn fire particles there, we do particle effect dot, and then actually no, that's an old way of doing it. We're gonna do the new way. We do lock.getWorld spawn particle, and then we just go with particle.flame, and we throw in the location, and I think oh, and then there are a bunch of versions for this method, but we are going to use I hope we can use a normal one, quote unquote. First we say how many we want to spawn, so let's just spawn like 5, which is already quite many, because remember, this method runs 20 times a second, so 5 times 20 means that we will be spawning 100 particles per second. So maybe actually just tone it down a bit to 3, and then we enter some offsets. So this means that these particles will spawn randomly with a maximum of 0.1 blocks distance from the origin. Now this is oh, it's afraid that world is it's afraid that world is null, though it can be, so we can go ahead and do this, but yeah, doesn't don't worry about it, basically. Alright, so currently this would continue on forever. We don't want that. We want to check if the ability has been running for more than 3 seconds, and if so, stop it. There's a very easy way to do that. We create an if statement, and like player and bending player, there's another very cool method that fire ability provides us with, and it's called get start time, which is actually a method. I'm sorry, not a variable. Basically, we say get start time, which returns in milliseconds the time this ability started, and we just add 3000 milliseconds to it. If that time is oh, I always find this so hard. Okay, so let's say your move started at 1000 seconds, and you add basically 3000 seconds to it, which means that it would stop at 4000 seconds. Now we want to check if that is less than the current time, because if so, it means we've passed it. So not if it's bigger, but if it's smaller. Sorry for that. And if so, we call the remove method. The remove method basically tells ProjectKorra, alright, this move is done for, it's finished, something happened that should make it stop, go and remove it. Alright. And yeah, that's it for our move logic, basically. We still have to register a permission, which we are going to do now. We are going to say permission perm is new wait, is this, oh wait, that's the wrong type of permission. It's been a while since I've registered a permission like this, so I hope I'm doing this right. I think I am. It's bending.ability.pyromancy, like this. And then we can say set default permission default.op. This means that by default only OP people can use this permission. Now we have to unregister it in stop. So instead of having it as a local thing here, we need it as a class field. So we've added it as a class field here. And then we go to the stop method and we say ProjectKorra like this, plugin, get server, get plugin manager, remove permission, and then we just say perm. And then here we actually need to add it. So we say ProjectKorra the plugin the get server, get plugin manager, add permission, perm. And then finally we need to initialize some configuration values. However, I think that might be better left for another video, because I have some bigger plans for that I would like to discuss like separately in a different video. So for now, no config values, though don't worry, they're coming. Alright, so we've created our first move. Now we are going to export it. This again is a platform specific thing. So first I'm going to be doing it for IntelliJ. Now IntelliJ, it is extremely complicated. It is way more complicated than it needs to be. So first off, we're going to go to project structure again, which is under file, and then project structure, or Ctrl Alt Shift S. And we go to artifacts. We create a new artifact and we say jar for empty. And we just say and we basically say add the compile output to the jar, like this. You can also go ahead and drag this into it, which means that these libraries will be packed into your exported jar file, but that's not necessary because they are provided, because they are on the server. So let's go and remove that again. Now we say apply and hit OK, and then we go to build. I think it's build, and we say build artifacts, and we just say pyromancy build. Now it's going to build our move, and it's finished, and it's now in the out artifacts pyromancy. There it is. Now for Eclipse, I believe it's much easier. I've never actually done it. You right click, you hit export, you select an export wizard, so you say Java, jar file, you just go next, and I believe that's actually it. You just select an export destination and then you just hit finish. Alright, so we've created our move. Let's go and open it in our file explorer like this, and I just cut it, and I go in here and I stop my server first. I already had it running in the background, and I throw it in here, and I start my server again. Now while this starts, I would like to explain to you why I fully stop my server, then throw in the move, and then stop it again. There are ways to just do it, well, quote unquote, faster, with stuff like plugin manager and stuff like that, though you could use it for production environments. When testing, it is just best to stick to the bare bones and just use a full stop, because it's just it's the most fail-proof scenario. You might argue that you want to test your move for all different kinds of scenarios, and you don't want a complete fail-proof scenario because you won't find bugs that way. Though using plugin manager can make very weird bugs occur, which you're just going to try and crack your head open and you can't figure it out, and you're going to be just rampaging through your code trying to find what it is. Turns out it was just some plugin manager thing. Alright, so I just recommend fully stop your server, that's it. Now I haven't created a test version of this before, so I hope this works, and if not, that would be a shame. So I'm joining my world. It's loading the terrain, thank you so much. And my now I hope my computer can handle Minecraft while also recording. I should have really tested this before. And alright, I'm gonna make myself a firebender. Also I'll put a link to the download of this world in the description. I did not make it myself. And we are going to say bending display fire. Now let's see if our move is there, and it is. Pyromancy. That's great. So let's say bending bind pyromancy, and we have successfully bound it to a slot, and now we right click, and there it is. There's our move. And for 3 seconds, fire particles spawn all around us, and it's happening way too fast, and the fire stays there. That is exactly what we wanted. Now, as you see, the fire particles spawn extremely fast, and they're going just all over the place, and you might not want that. So let's actually fine-tune it a bit. Let's just go make it 0.02, and or actually, I think this is fine, the offset is fine, but instead we should say 0.01 like this. This fourth double variable is the speed at which they move. So now they still spawn at the same distance, just not as fast. Let's also just let's buff it up again a bit. Our computer can handle stuff. Let's go with 10. Yeah. Before we install it again, I just remembered that there's another method that you can optionally implement, and it's called getDescription. Now, usually you would define your description in the language file, and then everything would happen automatically. However, for the sake of illustrating how this works, I will just do it in here. So a cool small move that allows firebenders to set a block on fire like this. So we save it, we go to build artifacts, and we build it. Now wait for it to finish building, for it to appear here. We stop the server, and we say show in Explorer, and I cut it, and I paste it in here, and I replace it. Oh, has the server not stopped? It has. There we go. And we start it again. And we just wait for it to start again. So yeah, we're gonna see the final product in a bit. But this is our first small move. I will be putting this on GitHub, and there will be a link to the repository in the description of this video. So you can always just clone the whole project, mess around with it. There's no kind of license on this. Feel free to do with it whatever you want, mess it around, just whatever. And just always remember that experimenting with these kind of things is just the best way to learn. I can tell you all the things I know, and still there will be so much more for you to discover by just messing around with the code. Alright, so let's go ahead and try to connect already. We're almost there. And there we go. So we're logging in, encrypting. And there we are. It's taking longer than I expected. Alright, thanks. Okay, so let's try it again. Right click. And there are a bunch of fire particles in there. Maybe could have been a little wider, but I think it's alright. So when we right click with pyromancy, without pyromancy selected, I mean, nothing happens. When we do it with, the block appears. Now, what happens when I right click on the side? Alright, this happens. I guess that's not exactly what we wanted, but it's okay for now. It's an issue for another day. Let's just set the sheep on fire. I think that would be pretty cool. I think that's a pretty good demonstration of what we've just created. Alright, so, and as a final thing, we will do bending help, pyromancy, and it will show a cool small move that allows firebenders to set a block on fire by Finbueno version 0.1.0.0. Alright, and that concludes the first small tutorial about how to make ProjectKorra add-ons. Earlier to make a tutorial on how to make blasts, moving the player, moving targets, finding targets, damaging them, but also charge times, different states of a single ability, combos, multi-abilities, just anything you can imagine and anything you want. I'd love to hear your suggestions. So thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful, and see you next time.